Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Buddhist Temple of Toledo. Please be seated and turn to page 2 in your liturgy book. Gata of atonement, all evil karma ever committed by me, sins of old on account of my beginningless greed, anger, and ignorance, born of my body, mouth, and thought. Now I atone for it all evil karma ever committed by me, sins of old on account of my beginningless greed, anger, and ignorance, born of my body, mouth, and thought. Now I atone for it all evil karma ever committed by me, sins of old on account of my beginningless greed, anger, and ignorance, born of my body, mouth, and thought. Now I atone for it all. Nikaya 3 Refuges. Buddham Saranam Gacchami. Buddham Saranam Gacchami. Dhammam take refuge in Dharma. I take refuge in Sangha. I take refuge in Sangha. The 5 remembrances. I am of the nature to grow old. There is no way to escape growing old. I am of the nature to have ill health. There is no way to escape having ill health. I am of the nature to die. There is no way to escape death. All that is dear to me and everyone I love are of the nature of change. There is no way to escape being separated from them. My deeds are my closest companions. I am the beneficiary of my deeds. My deeds are the ground on which I stand. I am of the nature to grow old. There is no way to escape growing old. I am of the nature to have ill health. There is no way to escape having ill health. I am of the nature to die. There is no way to escape death. All that is dear to me and everyone I love are of the nature of change. There is no way to escape being separated from them. My deeds are my closest companions. I am the beneficiary of my deeds. My deeds are the ground on which I stand. I am of the nature to grow old. There is no way to escape growing old. I am of the nature to have ill health. There is no way to escape having ill health. I am of the nature to die. There is no way to escape death. All that is dear to me and everyone I love are of the nature of change. There is no way to escape being separated from them. My deeds are my closest companions. I am the beneficiary of my deeds. My deeds are the ground on which I stand. This precious human life, rarely encountered, is easily lost. Now that I have life and opportunity, may I practice the Dharma wholeheartedly. Mahayana refuge. In my heart, I take refuge in Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha. May I liberate suffering beings and bring them to great joy. May the compassionate spirit of love grow within me, that I may actualize the great way. In my heart, I take refuge in Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha. May I liberate suffering beings and bring them to great joy. May the compassionate spirit of love grow within me, that I may actualize the great way. In my heart, I take refuge in Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha. May I liberate suffering beings and bring them to great joy. May the compassionate spirit of love grow within me, that I may actualize the great way. Invocation of the lineage. I give thanks for the guidance of my teachers. For the lineage of teachers before them, I give thanks and offerings for their devoted practice of generosity, moral discipline, patience, joyful effort, concentration, wisdom, skillful means, unshakable vow, spiritual powers, and awakened awareness for my benefit. May their years of life be lengthened, may their vows be completely realized, and may I cultivate these perfections with their guidance. 7 practices of the Bodhisattva. I bow down in body, speech, and mind. I offer the best I have to give, both real and imagined, to fill the space between us. I regret and purify all transgressions. I rejoice in all virtues. I request you to remain until total enlightenment. I request wise and compassionate guidance. I dedicate my merit for the sake of all beings. Generating love and compassion, may all sentient beings be free from clinging and hatred, being close to some and distant from others. How wonderful it would be. May this be accomplished. I will free them from clinging and hatred. Bless me to accomplish this. May all sentient beings enjoy happiness and the causes of happiness. How wonderful it would be. May this be accomplished. I will bring them happiness and the causes of happiness. Bless me to accomplish this. May all sentient beings be free from suffering and the causes of suffering. How wonderful it would be. May this be accomplished. I will free them from suffering and the causes of suffering. Bless me to accomplish this. May all sentient beings have a joy that has never known suffering. May they be free from clinging, hatred, jealousy, miserliness, doubt, pride, wrong view, ignorance, and dualistic thoughts. How wonderful it would be. May this be accomplished. I will bring them to this state. Bless me to accomplish this. Please stand. The Enne Juku Kangyo, found on page 6 in your liturgy book. Enne Juku Kanangyo Kanze Anamu Butsuyo Butsu Enyo Butsu En Bopo So En Jo Raku Gajo Chonen Kanze Bonen Kanze Nen Jushin Ki Nen Furi Shin Kanze Namu Butsuyo Butsu In Yo Butsu En Bopo So En Jo Raku Gajo Chonen Kanze Bonen Kanze Nen Jushin Ki Nen Furi Shin Kanze Namu Butsuyo Butsu In Yo Butsu En Bopo So En Jo Raku Gajo Chonen Kanze Zeyan, Nen Nen Jushin Ki, Nen Nen Furi Shin, absorbing world sounds awakens a Buddha right here. This Buddha, the source of compassion, this Buddha receives only compassion. Buddha, Dharma, Sangha, just compassion. Thus the pure heart always rejoices. In the light recall this, in the dark recall this. Moment after moment, the true heart arises. Time after time, there is nothing but this absorbing world sounds awakens a Buddha right here. This Buddha, the source of compassion. This Buddha receives only compassion. Buddha, Dharma, Sangha, just compassion. Thus the pure heart always rejoices. In the light recall this, in the dark recall this. Moment after moment, the true heart arises. Time after time, there is nothing but this absorbing world sounds awakens a Buddha right here. This Buddha, the source of compassion. This Buddha receives only compassion. Buddha, Dharma, Sangha, just compassion. Thus the pure heart always rejoices. In the light recall this, in the dark recall this. Moment after moment, the true heart arises. Time after time, there is nothing but this. Infinite realms of light and dark convey the Buddha mind. All that is and we ourselves come forth in perfect harmony. We offer this sincere and devoted practice for the many beings of the six worlds and dedicate it in grateful thanks to the strength and sound practice of the great Heartland Sangha and its teachers. May our virtuous actions be cleared from all interferences, and may our vows be fully realized. We especially dedicate these merits to all those suffering from cruelty, calamity, injustice, and war. A special dedication today for Sandra at the time of her death, and for those who we also name now: Roger, Debbie, Sokai, Hazel, Stephen, Christine, Mary, Michael, Jodo, Troy, Jim, Zuise, Eugen, Monica. May they have peace and healing. Jane, Angie, Jessica, and Mr. Perkins at the time of their deaths, and those whose names we hold in the silence of our hearts, as well as those whose names we now voice aloud. May we live in perfect peace with Buddha Dharma, and may we realize the Buddha way together. Space and time. We have Dharma School today, so Dharma School students and teachers, you can exit. And for those of us who remain, please be seated for Zazen. Please stand for our walking meditation and hymn. At the sound of the clappers, the first and third rows from the center will turn to their right, the second and fourth rows turn to their left. When clappers sound again, we'll begin walking at a half step at a time at a slow pace, 1 breath per step. And when the clappers sound the third time, we will proceed at a regular pace, following the person in front of us. We will now recite the Song of Covenant, which you can find in your literature books on page 8. We, the Daishin Korochi Sama, with respect for the worth and dignity of each person, with wonder at the wisdom and compassion we seek to cultivate by practice, and with deep gratitude for the teachers of this lineage and our connection to one another, covenant to support each other by upholding the precepts of doing no harm, practicing good, and actualizing good for others. Please be seated, sit comfortably, and so position yourself so you can receive your teaching. And we will open today's Dharma talk by reciting the Gatha on opening the sutra on page 8. Gata on opening the sutra.
Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for being here. Please sit comfortably in a way that we can see each other. We've just finished a multi-day retreat called a session, and it's one of the foundational practices of the community here. And it's an intense thing. It's very difficult to put into words what happens when we learn how to sit down, stop running away from or towards anything or ourselves or anyone else, and pay attention to our own experience and learn to actually trust ourselves in this very moment to moment trust. It seems that our mind is hardwired for damn near anything but that. Always some escape hatch, always some hack, some fix, some badge to be proud of, some scar to be embarrassed by, some silly thing. And so in retreat, we come together like in Zazen and let go of all the stories, all the identities. Be no one in particular. In fact, Rinsen Roshii used to say, you should die every time you sit in meditation. Talk about born again. It's a very good practice. And to help us understand and to kind of contextualize this, we've been working through what's called the Lankavatara Sutra. And for those who may not be acquainted, it's a foundational text in the Zen tradition. This is the text that it is said that Bodhidharma brought with him from India and transmitted to the first Chinese ancestor. So we've been paying some attention to it. And I think in response, my sense anyway, is the sutra's been paying some attention to our Sangha as well. I can feel the depth of practice ripening. And to be sure, no one can do this for you, but also to be sure you cannot do this alone. There are helpful forces at play. So let me introduce you a little further. This will conclude the chapter called Self-Realization, chapter 7. Disciples must exercise themselves in the discipline of jhana that leads to the realization of noble wisdom. To practice jhana, the earnest disciple should retire to a quiet and solitary place, remembering that lifelong habits of discriminative thinking cannot be broken off easily nor quickly. There are 4 kinds of concentrative meditation of jhana. The jhana practiced by the ignorant, the jhana devoted to the examination of meanings, the jhana with suchness as its object, and the jhana of the Tathagatas. So what we'll do in the time we have here together is unpack what those are. And first, a little bit about jhana itself. What is that? Well, it's a Sanskrit term that is a pastiche on the Pali term, jhana. So the original, we don't know what word the Buddha used. The language the Buddha spoke is long extinct. No one knows. But what survived in Pali is a term jhana. And this is referring to a very deeply concentrated state. In English, we have words like meditative state or contemplative practice or flow state, depending on how you come to this subject. But it's something that's empirically verifiable. There's nothing particularly spooky about it. It's when your mind becomes into a concentrated state, things are very different than when the mind is agitated or just kind of getting yanked around all the time, see? Now, the West, as a sweeping broad stroke, has placed its chips on material development, which I'm a fan of to a large degree. Science, math, learning, and so on. You could say, again, in too broad of strokes, that the Eastern folks from the Indic traditions have paid a lot of attention to internal technology, internal states of experience, and being very deeply concerned with them and studying them. And of course, this distinction is a false one. It doesn't need to be that way. And as every year goes by, thankfully, it erodes further. One of the benefits of humanity's conversation with itself is this exchange of the best of each other. So jhana itself, then in Sanskrit, was jhana. And then when the Chinese folks heard these Sanskrit and Pali words, they had trouble pronouncing them, and so they called them Chan, C-H-A-N in English. So the Chan school. And then when the Japanese folks heard that word, they couldn't pronounce that, so they called it Zen. So as I like to say, Zen is a mispronunciation of a mispronunciation of a guess as to what was actually said. Keeping it real. But whatever word we use, it points to a real experience. And so the sutra itself points out 4 kinds, and I'm going to add 2 more, just because I can. And Zen, as a way of practicing the Buddha Dharma, also values art. So art, jhana, creativity, the creative process, not just for its own sake, but as an encounter with and an expression of the true nature of the cosmos itself. So high bar. And also body practice. Working with the body in a way that the body goes into a flow state of concentration awareness. So traditionally in Zen, you can point to swordsmanship, let's say in calligraphy. There are a number of pairings like this that would be very common for a Zen practitioner to have some art training and some physical training of a kind. And that's certainly been my experience. The sutra itself, however, elucidates 4 that we need to understand thoroughly. The first one, lovingly titled, The Jhana Practiced by the Ignorant. I wonder how the sutra really feels. This is the jhana, this is the meditative state, resorted to by those who are following the example of the disciples and masters, but who do not understand the purpose of jhana. And therefore, it simply becomes still sitting with a vacant mind. Still sitting with a vacant mind. This, the sutra says, is not the ideal. In fact, this is the mistake. This is sort of the near enemy. If you have the idea, as many people do, that what you need to do is stamp out your own mind, like some kind of mental game of whack-a-mole where you're shutting yourself off at every turn, and your great reward is you get to sit there in a blank state, free from the perturbingness of your mind. That's not Zen. And that will never lead to awakening, because from that state, no wisdom arises. None. Compassion doesn't come from these experiences. It's simply still sitting with a vacant mind. So this is acknowledging the fact that these samadhi states is not something that the Buddha, as we know, the Buddha to be, didn't create this. He wasn't the first person to notice the mind can become concentrated, not hardly. But using it as an end unto itself is a mistake. This is to be avoided. And in fairness, when you see critiques that some traditions may hold of some expressions of the Zen tradition, what they're actually often critiquing is this mistake. They perceive, they come in perhaps and see a picture of a bunch of folks sitting really still, and they think, oh, well, there's a bunch of escapists disassociating like hideouts. And if that's what would be happening, then the critique would be valid and important. So that's not what the sutra or the Buddha is asking us to do. So you might wonder to yourself, well, geez, what did I just do? Am I like in the right house? Am I doing this right? There will be moments, fluttering and temporary, where the mind literally becomes extraordinarily still. You don't have to agitate or create cacophony for yourself. But don't covet this and don't hold on to it. Don't mistake that for the goal. Okay. This particular kind of dead Zen sitting, you could say, this dead jhana, this still sitting vacant mind goof, is also practiced by those who despise their own bodies. And they see their body as a shadow and a skeleton suffered with nothing but impurities. So you want to escape your own body. How could you do that? Well, you could go in and just shut off. You could try. And yet these folks who are so at odds with their own bodies cling to the notion of an ego, of a self. And so they feel, mistakenly, that they can attain awakening by merely stopping the thinking. And let's be very clear, this is a mistaken view. When Master Dogen says think non-thinking, he's not saying stop thoughts. It's not what's being pointed to. It's probably one of the least helpful translations amongst a pile of unhelpful translations, is that one. There are some words English just kind of doesn't have the ability to grapple with, honestly. Now, the second jhana from the sutra. This jhana is devoted to the examination of meaning and is the one practiced by those who, perceiving the untenability of such ideas as self, other, both, which are held by the philosophers and who have passed beyond the twofold egolessness, devote jhana to an examination of the significance of egolessness and the differentiations of the bodhisattva stages. Now, this kind of contemplative practice, I believe I first encountered in the Western monastic traditions, derived from the Benedictine order founded in the 6th century in the Western contemplative traditions. And a feature of any Western monastic practice that traces through that lineage is something called Lectio Divina. This is where the monastic has time set aside each day for what in English might most readily be translated as contemplative reading, contemplative study. In other words, studying not just from an academic or intellectual perspective, but spending time with important ideas and concepts in a contemplative way. And this is a kind of a meditation practice which is actually quite important. There's nothing invalid about this. If you just think of it, if your mind is completely scattered and all over the place, and you try to engage a text that has some depth, it's not going to be that accessible to you. There's this like filter going on, right? So the wisdom tradition shows that there is actually ways to be in a deeply concentrated samadhi jhana state while actually engaging with thoughts and ideas. Meaningfully, inquiry into the nature of no self and into compassion as it manifests in the world. So for those in the room who are in this moment in the initiatory process for Jukai, of receiving the precepts, my hope for you is that you tumble into some experience yourself with contemplatively being with these ideas and concepts that are so important. For example, doing no harm. Like if you just take that as a face value bumper sticker, yeah, whatever, dude, I got it. But if you really learn how to contemplatively be with that, there's much nutrition there that will come from your own wisdom eye, with the text as kind of a prompt, you see. And then your wisdom eye is confirmed by the wisdom eye of the lineage. So this kind of jhana state of contemplative reading, I really recommend that everybody has a practice of studying good, nutritious texts. And they don't have to just be Zen Buddhist texts. I mean, there are great works that have shaped the culture that we all inherit for good and ill. And if you are ignorant about those texts, you do not sense the pulse of its influence in everyday life. It is there. And when you understand it, you are able to be free of it and to enhance the things that are worth enhancing, to let go of the things that are worth not holding on to any longer. Thus, the jhana of the examination of meaning. For those here engaging in the Lam Rim study, obviously this is what's going on. The teachings are given in points that come to us from our Tibetan lineage tradition, and the expectation and explicit guidance is not that one simply memorizes them like you're trying to get through some high school exam you can't stand. Just remember it, spit it out, jettison it. No, no, no. The ask here is to contemplatively be with the points of the Lam Rim teaching. Really spend time with them so that they integrate in a way that's cellular, not just intellectual. There's the pointer. Now, the next jhana, you've got the mistake, you've got meanings, right? The third one, the jhana with tathata, or suchness, or oneness, for its object, is practiced by those earnest disciples and masters while fully recognizing the twofold egolessness and the imagelessness of the tathata, yet cling to the notion of an ultimate truth. Okay. So, tathata, this is a kind of a funny sounding word perhaps, but it translates as suchness, thusness, okay? And in the Zen tradition, there's all kinds of smacks and shouts and surprising maneuvers you don't see coming, this kind of stuff. And they're expressions of thusness, of right now, immediate thus, boom, right? And this is not just kind of an escape hatch, this is a presentation of. And when the person is in a correct kind of state of mind, such presentations can be deeply transformative. So taking thusness or suchness or Buddha nature, same, taking your own true nature as an object of meditation. This is this jhana state. And this is recognizable to those who are engaged in koan work. In koan work, what are we doing? We're deliberately creating an artificial pressure to guide the practitioner into confronting their true nature. And it's necessary for koan study that you think there's a true nature there to confront with. There's some there. This is an integral part of the motivation for it. And it's beautiful and it's necessary. But ultimately, when koan study does its work, you graduate from it, so to speak, and you no longer have this experience of self-nature as an object of perception. In fact, what you'll see quite clearly is that there's no way for the logical, linear, analytical mind, the linguistic mind, the dualistic mind, to take reality as an object of experience. It is not. Prajna, wisdom, realizes Buddha nature. Prajna, wisdom, is expressed from your Dharma eye. Your Dharma eye perceives true nature. And koan is what helps us catalyze this process quite handsomely, I might say. And just to say it, the quality of the session that we just went through is happily now become typical. The quality of the silence and the depth of concentration and the work that's happening from each of you in the Doksan room is inspiring to me, because it's actually happening. This enlightenment stuff is not just for other people of mythical times and realms. It's here in Toledo, where all good things arrive. So this jhana all of these jhanas can be critiqued. And this is something to be very careful about. If you have someone who doesn't actually know in their own experience the depth of what these practices are, they have no right to critique them. Because for them, it's an idea. They think what they think that is. And their critiques cannot be valid because they have no experience of it. It would be like a prepubescent child critiquing what a relationship is. They're just, they have some sense, but they're there. Don't stress yet. The stress will come, trust me. So one must have one's own direct experience with these things. This is the point. It will not help you at all to simply believe that, well, the Buddha was enlightened and I hope he helps me somehow. But he's trying. He's saying, sit your ass on the cushion and pay attention and do the work. But now this final jhana. The jhana of the Tathagatas is the jhana of those who are entering upon the stage of Tathagatahood and who, abiding in the triple bliss, which characterizes the self-realization of noble wisdom, are devoting themselves for the sake of all beings. They are devoting themselves for the sake of all beings to the accomplishment of the incomprehensible works of their awakening and emancipation. This is the pure jhana of the Tathagatas. When all lesser things and ideas are transcended and forgotten, there remains only a perfect state of imagelessness, where Tathagata and Tathata are merged in perfect oneness. Then all the Buddhas will come together from their various Buddha lands, and with their shining hands resting on the forehead of the practitioner will welcome a new Tathagata. So what the heck is that? What's that pointing to? Sounds kind of good. Sounds kind of spooky. Tathagata, okay, tatata. Tatata is suchness, thusness, Buddha nature, this thing, okay. Tathagata is a term, it's an honorific term, it has three components. It means one who has thus gone. The Tathagata is one who has thus gone. It also means, interestingly, the Tathagata is one who has thus come. And also, interestingly, one who has thus arrived. So, gone from samsara to nirvana, from suffering to the emancipation of total awakening and enlightenment. Thus gone. From suffering and samsara to awakening and enlightenment and freedom from suffering, nirvana. Thus gone. But that's not enough. Thus come. From nirvana back to samsara. From the top of the mountain down the other side back into the village. Thus come. The thus gone one, the thus come one. Do you see? The tradition is not built around people who say, I'm out of here and go off into the heavens somewhere. Bye. I got mine. I don't know about you, but I find it particularly nauseating when people who sport religious language talk about how much they'll enjoy watching the suffering of the lessers in whatever hell they concoct for their disbelief or apostasy. Can you imagine having your spiritual awakening depend on enjoying someone else's suffering? What's up with that? That's weird. That's really strange. At least it's very strange to me. The Bodhisattva says, as long as any being in any realm, in any state is suffering, I'm here and I'm going to help. It's the absolute opposite of someone who says, oh, the world is horrible, I'm leaving, and goes off into some thoughtless state in the cave. Dude, that's just bypassing. That's just escapism. And that will not work. I wouldn't study with such a person. What would they have to teach? None of my teachers were in that trip. These masters I was able to study with, some will be here, by the way, for Sensei's Inka Shomei coming up. I hope you can be here. It's going to be pretty amazing. Yeah. Jazz hands. But my teacher, my transmitting teacher, Rinsen Roshii, I mean, this is a guy who's relentlessly bringing himself into the trenches, wherever he is. I mean, the footprints this person has left on the various places where they've lived, Sangha sprout. He's like Johnny Sangha seed, you know. Don't tell him I said that. Yeah. But yeah, for the sake of all beings, see. Now the thus come, the thus gone, you've got, if you haven't gotten yourself really from the grip of samsara into your own perfection and freedom, you need to get that together. You can't play if you can't do that. You want to be in the band, pick an instrument, get some chops together. You have to do this. That's how it works, okay? You can't just skip that. But you can't get stuck there either. I won't let you. Because there are still people suffering in samsara, so come on back. Let's hang. Let's roll what sleeves you have up and let's get into it, shall we? See? So, thus returned, thus gone, thus come. Thus arrived means one who has arrived at thusness. One who has arrived at themselves. One who has realized themselves and arrived fully as themselves. That's all enlightenment is. You fully come home. What do? Well, it depends on your karmic causes and conditions. I show up as a jazz musician. How do you show up? It can be whatever. You can drive a bus, you can therapize, you can run a nonprofit, you can make eggs, on and on. You can be hidden in the world. It's a noble charge. It's a noble charge. We love those eggs. Let's have a hand for those eggs. But this is actually the great freedom, is, if you think that in order to be enlightened you have to show up some kind of strange way, you're just missing it, and stop it. It's unsightly. Just cut it out. It's goofy. Don't be goofy. Just be earnest, be honest. In order to get to this level of sincerity, you need training, though. Yes, you do. You don't just flop out of bed and then this happens. You've actually got to train. You've got to train yourself and know how to do this. Even the best and brightest among us, if you don't have aid from the lineage and from community and from guidance, it's not going to happen. This is a fact. This is my experience. This is the experience that's verified by some 2,600 years of Sangha like this, gathering to practice. So it requires a willingness to, with head in hand, humbly approach. And you can. And it's a wonderful thing. Isn't it amazing to know that you're actually on the path of awakening? In a world that seems like it's just hell-bent on ripping itself apart for no apparently good reason at all, a purely opt-in catastrophe, which they largely have been, by the way, in human history. And yet here we go again, with such imbalance and such foolishness holding sway. How radical and countercultural is it to sit down and be still and just pay attention in correct ways? And then, from that place, get up and do your gig. Get up and raise those kids and care for your parents or whatever it is that you need to do. Figure yourself out. What are you going to do now? You can be in a situation in your life where you've got things all figured out, and then some things change, and now nothing's figured out. Well, good for you. Who will you be now? How shall you arise now? When you are a thus gone, thus come, thus arrived one, I tell you what, you will arise impeccably. You will respond to whatever the imperative is that presents itself. And you'll meet it beautifully, and you won't know a thing about it. It will not be in a spreadsheet. It will not be all spelled out. It will be a spontaneous, direct response to what's happening in that moment. And that can look like anything. Cleaning the bathrooms, up here in funny robes giving a talk. It doesn't matter. What matters is, are you awake? Are you realized? Are you living an authentic, true life yourself, of your own life? And do you know it? This is possible. The lineage says, if you learn to concentrate the mind correctly, if you learn to wield your mind first, then you will be able to see these things. What ends up happening is that the Tathagata and the Tata merge into complete oneness. And this state of imageless is absolutely pristine. And it's responsive. It's not dead person Zen. It's very awake, very alive, very engaged. Mind resting simply in its own being. These words are pitiful compared to the experience, compared to the reality. But I have to say something. So a mind resting simply in the truth of its own being, responding impeccably to the imperative of the moment for the sake of all beings throughout space and time. This compassion is boundless. This compassion has as its fuel a wisdom that is limitless. But it all depends on you. No one can do this for you. So take it up. Dig in. Learn the disciplines and the practices. Get involved. Get connected. Don't be afraid to get on stage and play. There's no other way to get it together. May it be so.
Beings are numberless. I vow to free them. Delusions are inexhaustible. I vow to end them. Dharma gates are boundless. I vow to enter them. The Buddha way is unsurpassable. I vow to embody it. Beings are numberless. I vow to free them. Delusions are inexhaustible. I vow to end them. Dharma gates are boundless. I vow to enter them. The Buddha way is unsurpassable. I vow to embody it. Beings are numberless. I vow to free them. Delusions are inexhaustible. I vow to end them. Dharma gates are boundless. I vow to enter them. The Buddha way is unsurpassable. I vow to embody it.
Thank you, everybody, for your practice.
Thank you, everyone.